Hi friends, I hope that you are staying warm and cozy. My name is Jewel. I am the knitwear designer and influencer here at North Knits, and I am so happy that it is pattern release day. I am thrilled to be sharing with you my Winterwish Cowl. I knit this in design collaboration with Lion Brand Yarn, and y'all, I love it so much. This was knit with local grown. It is a 100% domestic made in USA yarn. It is a CYC worsted weight 4 yarn, and I really enjoyed using it for the first time. It is so soft, it gets even softer as you block it, and I know that you're going to enjoy knitting with this yarn. I'm really happy with the colors that I chose, which is this really beautiful cherry blossom, this deep Mustang blue, and this really nice gray quail. I'm even more excited to bring this tutorial walkthrough guide that is going to give you all the basics so that you can make your own Winterwish cowl. So let's just get right into it and get started. Here's my completed sample of my Winterwish cowl. I love this piece so much. I really had a lot of fun knitting these basic smooth stitches all the way around with this cool neutral meets color pop trio. I knit this for that really classic infinity look in 100% wool yarn. And it's really this unique blend of hues that I think add vibrancy and really create that winter wardrobe staple. So today I'm going to show you the easy techniques that will really give you the confidence to know the basics in order to make this cowl. Here's the yarn that I used in order to make my Winterwish cowl. This is Lion Brand yarn, local grown. I really enjoyed using this yarn so much. It is a 100% wool yarn that is 100% USA made. From the sheep raised and shorn here in the States to a mill that dyes and spins the final product, local grown yarn is created from start to finish right here in the United States, and I love that. It's a CYC 4 worsted weight yarn, so local grown really lends itself to many types of projects, from garments to wearable accessories like my cowl. This yarn, like a lot of wool yarns, really has that natural elasticity that helps retain your shape even after you start to wear it and use it over and over again. And I really like the way that it was really seamless and quite easy to really research my color theory and figure out which colors that I wanted to pair together, whether I wanted to go more cool, more warm, how I went to color block, did I want to use single colors. I really think that this is something that you have a lot of options with and you can't go wrong. It really has an extensive color palette that plays well with each other. This yarn also works really well when you want to showcase basic smooth stitches like the stockinette stitches that you'll knit in my Winterwish cowl. The first thing that we're going to do is cast on 50 stitches using the long tail cast on method with our 5mm US 8 knitting needle. Now LTCO is something that I consider more of a beginner friendly technique, and I consider it as a prereq if you're going to make my Winterwish cowl. So I really encourage you, if you need a little bit of extra assistance on how to do long tail cast on, to do a little bit of internet research. It's a really beginner friendly method and very easy to use, but I will show you pretty briefly here how I do the long tail cast on. So I've got some yarn here, and essentially what I'm going to be doing is really creating my yarn tail and my working yarn. So you'll want to give yourself a long tail here. Again, we're going to cast on our 50 stitches here using the long tail cast on method. So I'm going to, using my pointer finger and my thumb, split the yarn like so on my left hand, and with the needle in my right hand, I'm basically going to create my first loop by taking the needle and putting it under the yarn and bringing it down. It looks almost like that cat's cradle V. Okay, so I'll show you that again. And take my pointer finger and my thumb to split the yarn. We've already got this long tail situation going on here, separate it from our working yarn just by splitting like so. Then with the needle in your right hand, you want to scoop it under the yarn, bring it down in order to make your V, scoop the needle under the yarn on your thumb, scoop it under the yarn on your pointer finger, and using the yarn that's on your thumb, bring that loop over the needle and drop it off like so. And as you can see, we've got what appears here to be a little mock loop and one loop on our needle. So again, we're going to just keep going. I'm going to split the yarn, Take the needle, scoop it under the yarn on my thumb, scoop it around the yarn on my pointer finger, bring that loop of yarn that's on my thumb over the needle, pull down and drop off. Now we've got 3 stitches. And these stitches, you don't want them to be too loose, you don't want them to be too tight, but you want to make sure that you've got some good tension, that you feel pretty relaxed in creating them. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and keep with my long tail cast on, and I'll meet you at 50 stitches. I have my 50 stitches cast on, and we're going to go ahead and work the first section, which is the first 6 rows. So let me show you here. So we're going to be working this first section here, which consists of our knit 1, purl 1 ribbing, and then our stockinette stitch. In the pattern, it calls for you to make this first section and all subsequent sections accordingly by color A, B, and C. So for my sample, I have the colored knit here in Cherry Blossom, but to really make sure you can see the stitches, I'm using the quill. But we're going to work these first 6 rows in ribbing, and then I'll show you how to do the stockinette. So what we'll do after casting on our 50 stitches and moving into section 1, we'll work rows 1 through 6, which is working in a knit 1, purl 1 rib until our ribbing measures 1 inch or about 2.5 centimeters in the color A of our choice. When you're working ribbing flat, as we're doing here, you're going to knit the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches on the right side and the wrong side rows as you see them. I want to go ahead and start to work our knit 1, purl 1 repeat. Just put that needle under our first stitch there, and we'll knit 1 and purl 1. And I want to get close here so I can show you. We have our knit stitch, purl stitch, knit stitch, purl stitch, knit stitch, purl stitch, knit, which looks like that V, and purl. Again, knit 1, purl 1 in order to make rib is one of the prereqs that you'll want to make sure that you have in order to knit the pattern and to make these first 6 rows. Knit, purl, we'll knit, purl, knit. Now the important thing, once you get comfortable with your ribbing, is just to remember that when you're knitting here, you want your working yarn in the back. And when you're purling, you want to bring that yarn around to the front. We're just going to create this knit 1, purl 1 repeat for the entire length of the row. And slow down here and show you a little bit slower just in case you are one of my new besties. We've got our purl stitch there, which looks like our little bump, and knit stitches look like little V's. Knit, purl. So I'm taking my needle, I'm going under the loop, making sure my yarn is in the back, and I'm wrapping yarn around that stitch, putting it under the loop and pulling it off. In order to make the purl stitch, I'm bringing my working yarn in the front, taking the needle under the loop again, bringing the yarn around, pushing the needle under to scoop the stitch off. And once I bring my working yarn back around to the back in order to prep to knit, that's really what is creating that purl bump. Already seen those knits and purls form. Okay, so we're coming up on our last 2 stitches here. I'm going to go ahead and knit and purl. Want to make sure you bring your working yarn around to the back in order to complete that last purl stitch. And we finished our first row. Now for row 2, we are going to repeat working knit 1, purl 1. And again, we're going to be doing this for rows 1 through 6 until your ribbing measure is 1 inch 2.5 centimeters. Now again, when you're working ribbing flat, as we're doing here, you're wanting to knit the knit stitches and purl the purl stitches. We'll do that again on the right side, but here on the wrong side as we see them. So a lot of people will get this confused and they'll be like, oh, I purled here, so I'm going to purl here. But no, you do it as you see it. So you can see this is a knit, purl, knit, purl. So I'm going to be knitting a knit stitch because that's what I see. I'm going to purl stitch. So that's what I see. Right. Knit a knit stitch. That's what I see. And purl the purl stitch because that's what I see. Knit the knit stitch because that's what I see. And purl the purl stitch. That's what I see. Knit the knit stitch with my yarn in the back because that's what I see. And purl the purl stitch. Yarn in the front because that's what I see. Now you'll know that something probably isn't right if you start to get moss stitch, which is a different stitch, not what we want. So you can already see that the knits are sitting on top of the knits and the purls are sitting on top of the purls, which is really what gives you that ribbing look. I'm going to go ahead and knit these last 2 stitches here. So as you can see, there's a knit stitch. So I'm going to knit. And there's my purl stitch. So I'm going to purl. And drop that part of the needle, bring my yarn around. So now I have my right side, my wrong side rows, and I'm just going to turn back to my right side and continue working and ribbing. So again, for the right side, don't want to get it confused. Just because you purled there, you don't want to think, oh, I'll purl on the next row. You want to knit the knits as you see them and purl the purls as you see them. It means for our first stitch here, I'm going to go ahead and my knit stitch because I see a purl stitch there. I'm going to knit my purl stitch. And see that beautiful ribbing starting to show. Once you finish section 1, working rows 1 through 6 in your knit 1, purl 1 ribbing until your ribbing measures the 1 inch in the color A. Remember, you're going to be knitting this flat, so you'll be knitting those knit stitches and purling the purl stitches both on the wrong side and right side rows as you see them. And then after that, you'll move into section 2. And section 2 is creating this beautiful, smooth stitch fabric right here, which is known as stockinette stitch. And so for the second section, we'll be working rows 7 through 30, continuing to knit, but in stockinette stitch. And we'll continue that in the same color A. Now for row 7 and all of your odd rows, which is your right side, you're going to knit every stitch until you have 1 stitch remaining, and then you are going to slip stitch the last stitch purl rise, which I'll show you how to do. And then for row 8 and all even rows, which is how your wrong side is going to look here, you're going to purl every stitch until you have 1 stitch remaining. Then we'll be slipping stitch the last stitch purlwise, which I will also show you how to do that. Okay, so let's continue knitting the second section in stockinette stitch in color A. So just like when we were creating our knit stitch, when we were doing ribbing, you'll want to make sure that your working yarn is in the back, taking your right needle, putting it under the loop, and then just bringing that yarn around, putting the needle under and slipping the stitch off. Now again, when we were ribbing, once we came to a purl stitch, we were purling as we see it, but for stockinette, we will just continue to knit every stitch. So it becomes even more of a relaxing workup. Because for all of our right side rows, we get to just knit, knit, knit. Keep knitting each stitch until you get to the very last stitch, and I will meet you there. We're at our last stitch here, and the pattern calls for us to slip the stitch purlwise, which is really easy. We will just bring our working yarn to the front as if we were going to purl, but instead of purling the stitch, we will just insert our needle under the loop and slip it right off. Now we'll still want to bring our yarn back over. We've just slip stitched the last stitch purlwise and completed our row 7. To work row 8, again, row 8 and all even rows will be considered your wrong side row, so you'll be purling every stitch until you have 1 stitch remaining, and then you'll slip stitch the last stitch purlwise. So again, you'll want to make sure that the yarn is in the front so that you can purl. Oh, the cable needle is a little bit more here in the way. I just want to purl, purl, purl. Now it's okay if you go a little bit more paced in creating your purl stitches. For me, they take a little bit more time. So when you're purling, you'll always want to make sure that your working yarn here is in the front of your work, not the back. Okay, so just keep purling until you get to your last stitch. We are here at our last stitch, and just like we did for row 7, we will be slip stitching our last stitch purlwise. Now because our working yarn is already in the front of our work, we can just simply take our needle, put it under the loop, and slide the stitch right off like so. And then we just want to make sure we bring that over, and we've just completed the wrong side of our work. So you can see the stockinette stitch already starting to form for those first 2 rows. Now you'll continue working in your stockinette stitch. I've worked up a few rows here. You can see how that beautiful ribbing has formed against the stockinette stitch. This is the right side, and then we have our wrong side work. So you'll continue to work for this first section as called for in the pattern, as well as the subsequent sections noted in your colors B and C. So we're ready to add in. You'll want to have your work here in your left hand. Sort of start to bring this new color in your left hand as well. Pick up the needle in your right hand, and you'll want to add in your new color at the beginning of the row. So you'll just stick the needle under the loop. You want to make sure your tails aren't too long when you're adding in your color. You don't want to go beyond 4 inches or 10 centimeters. And it's really easy. Just create a mock loop here. Slide the yarn onto the needle. Pull the yarn through as if you were going to make a knit stitch. And there you go. And the way that I've called for it in the pattern is that you'll be adding in your new colors on the right side of your work, so you don't have to fuss around trying to add in new color work on a purl side or wrong side row. You can go ahead and make sure you drop that working yarn in the previous color, pick up the color, new color that you'll be working with. Careful to keep your tail out of the way. And you'll just begin to knit as normal. So here's my second stitch. And it's going to be a little bit loose. So you can just take that previous yarn color and tighten up that stitch. Don't pull too tight, but just nice and snug. It's okay if the first stitch is a little loose. And continue knitting the duration of the row like normal, remembering to slip stitch your last stitch purlwise. Okay, so we are at that last stitch here. So you want to remember to bring the yarn to the front of your work as if to purl, slip stitch, bring the yarn over. So on the next row, after adding in your new color, you'll be on a wrong side, and this first stitch here will be in the color that you previously worked in, so don't let that scare you. Just continue to work your row in the new color. So you want to make sure that the yarn is in the front as we'll be purling. And then you will just continue purl. I've come to the last stitch here on that first wrong side after adding in a new color, and you can see here it is a little bit loose, but that's okay. We'll tighten that up in just a bit. So our working yarn is already in the front, so we can just go ahead and slip stitch that last stitch purlwise. Now you can just tighten it up right there. Not too tight. Just make sure it's nice and snug. It's really clean and smooth as far as the color add in on the right side, which is what we want. You don't want this, although it can be, you know, a look, you really don't, for this pattern, want that on the front side of your work. So once you get to the section that calls for you to add in your color C, you will do the same thing. I've got my work in my left hand here, picked up that new color. Go ahead and pick up my right needle. I'm going to stick the needle under the loop, create my mock loop here, like so. Slide that onto the needle, ensuring that my tail isn't too long, and pull the yarn under the loop. You want to make sure that you have your working yarn and that you're not knitting with your tail. I just want to go ahead and knit as normal. And again, it's going to be pretty loose here. You want to make sure you have just 2 stitches, that you're not adding on any extra stitches from the previous yarn colors, and you can kind of start to adjust here and smooth those stitches out. Now you're going to love knitting this flat, particularly with the color work, because it keeps everything smooth and seamless, and you don't have to fuss too much with your tension, as can be the case when you're working in the round. Another little secret that I'll show you is I haven't woven in my ends, because once you seam this, all those ends are going to be hidden in, so you don't have to worry about that. And you'll just continue as the pattern calls for. But for this last section, you're going to get back around to mirroring what we did for the first section. So we're going to be working our basic stockinette stitch up and then knitting back in 1x1 ribbing. And then you'll just join these, your first section and your last section here with the seaming technique of your choice. I did like really simplistic mattress stitch. Doesn't have to be the prettiest and most perfect, but just something to bring those two sections together. So yeah, it looks on the inside. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I always feel like my mattress seaming is not the best, but for this, it doesn't really matter because the way that you're going to be wearing it, it's going to be hidden. No one's really going to be seeing this seaming. I hope you all enjoy knitting Winterwish as much as I have. Please share the kit and the pattern with all your friends, and make sure that you share your finished cowl. I want to see your colors on Instagram. Tag me at North Knits, #Winterwish Cowl, so that me and the Lion Brand Yarn team can see. And if you want to see more tutorials and walkthroughs like this, I would be so happy to. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you have any pattern questions, you can always email me as well. I hope that we continue to wish for all the beautiful things together with all the cozy. Happy knitting, friends. Bye.